Hello, I'm Olia, for those of you that do not know me, which is most people. I'm a mother, I'm a writer, I am a seeker of truth and its student, and I am a disciple of Jesus Christ. I'm also a creator, like you. We all create the things we desire. We create our life, create our experience. We create relationships. We create our sphere of influence. we create patterns in our life. We create what we focus on, what we believe in. We create what we choose, whether or not we know that or not. Today I wanted to talk about the divine masculine. I want to create a conversation and a discussion. There's been some questions that have arisen, perhaps due to the emergence of the powerful divine feminine. And it might seem odd for some that a woman would speak of the divine masculine, but really we have both energies within us. So I think that's just fine. I have identified a few points that I think are characteristic or are intrinsic to the divine masculine. And I thought about some of the things that are typical and characteristic of it, and some of the things that perhaps we have assumed are typical and intrinsic to it and are not. I think it's common for us as humans to look to the past for role models, for examples, for precedent. And it is tempting for us to look to our parents as we address these questions and subjects of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. But really, anything that is to be created has to come from the now. All future begins only in the now. And this tendency to look to the past no longer serves us. You can compare it to trying to establish a healthier lifestyle or healthier behaviors as it pertains to physical health. So it's a little bit like us looking to our parents for healthy examples. All the while, these are the people that have created unhealthy patterns of family history of diabetes and cancer and a slew of other diseases. And you can see that, all of those things don't become obvious until a few decades down the road, that the lifestyles of our parents were not all that healthy after all, until the symptoms of some of these illnesses become apparent. And sometimes when they do become apparent, it's too late to make any significant changes. So just like that, in the spiritual, we have to look to really just the Lord. And a few of the examples of those that have followed him in the past that history has afforded us to discern and decide for ourselves what the divine masculine looks like, what it is, and what it's not. The first thing that comes to mind as I think about this is that the Divine Masculine has a solid relationship with divinity. And it is a relationship that is firmly established, and it is not contingent on any mediators. The relationship in which there's a perfect confidence that the choices that are being made in life are acceptable to the Lord and are in perfect sync with His direction, His guidance, and His will. The Divine Masculine does not run to any mortal authority, no ecclesiastical leader, no government official, or anyone of the kind to confirm that the choices they're making are correct. There are no authority figures. The Lord is the only authority figure there is, the Lord and the Elohim. The Divine Masculine is a very dynamic entity. And I know because, from what I have experienced, the Divine Feminine is also extremely dynamic. If you think about the Lord, and our perceptions are sometimes limited to viewing Him as a picture, a painting, or a stained glass window, which is a very still concept. But really, in His life, He was never still. He was always reaching out to people, serving, healing, blessing, meeting, connecting. He was establishing relationships, and He was there for those that needed Him. He was always on the road, traveling from place to place. And that's during His ministry, but we know that prior to that, it wasn't much different. He was always on the go, always in the moment, always in the flow. And that is the space of I am finding out, for both. For all divinity, masculine and feminine, is being in the flow and being very dynamic. One thing I know for a fact is that the Lord is an overcomer. And as an overcomer, He invites others to do the same. And it is no wonder. He is not interested in keeping us in a space of comfort, in a space of stagnation, and He would much rather have us be in a constant place of growth. And that means that He, with us, will create new environments and experiences. He will expand our knowledge for us. He will shed light on things. He will bring people to us or bring us to them. But there's that the same dynamics of being in constant action and constant propelled motion. I love the quote by Joseph Smith where he compared himself to a rough stone rolling. And if you think about it, what better analogy could there be? What could possibly stop the force of gravity with which a stone is rolling down a hill as it's being molded and shaped by the Lord and whatever it needed to be? I know that a lot of us have insights into our purpose and our mission and our identity. And I think sometimes we confuse our I lowercase m with I capital I am uppercase. And the two are not the same. We want to stay comfortable. We want to play small. And the Lord is not like that. He needs people of action, people that will be willing to be all in, both men and women. It's like in a game. If you're playing a game of football, the only way to score a touchdown is to be on the field. And you do not score a touchdown if you're sitting in the audience or sitting on the sidelines, if you're redshirting or whatever it is you're doing, if you are worried about being in the game and about being fully engaged and involved, if you're worried about getting hurt, or if you're worried about other people getting hurt, or if you're worried about your hoity-toity uniform getting dirty, then you're not in the game. And I feel like that's what the Lord wants and needs. And this is the patterns we have seen with prophets that have come before us. We would not know who Abraham is had he not made the choice to take the action of going up Moriah and putting his son on the altar. We would not know about Joseph of Egypt if he had not stood in his I am, regardless of his circumstances, and because of that was able to become the prince of Egypt, essentially, and transform the nation and be a blessing to his entire family, both the Hebrews and the Egyptians. And certainly we would not know about Joseph Smith had he not left the legacy of moving mountains, literally moving, doing the impossible in the amount of time with the skills, the knowledge he was granted, and restoring and establishing as much as he did and bringing forth as much as he did. If we're standing next to a molehill and expect to move mountains, it's not going to work like that. The Lord needs people that will be willing to do the impossible and move mountains around a few times over. That's just the way it goes. If you're staying in water and if you're treading it, good. If that is your choice, absolutely. The Lord will not violate that. If you're feeling trapped, if you're feeling limited by your circumstance or whatever it is you're feeling, then you're not standing in your I am, because I am knows that it is infinite. It is powerful and confident, and it moves forward, which is the only place the Lord wants us to go. As I was saying, if you're standing in water and treading it, your choice, your agency won't be violated, but you cannot learn to walk on water just by treading it. And you certainly cannot part the Red Sea if you do not lift up your staff. And if you don't lift up your staff, you don't get to be a Moses. And that's just the way it works. The Lord doesn't violate agency. He doesn't force anyone to step into their purpose and mission. But he is a plan B kind of guy. If we are not willing to do that, then he will raise someone else to do the same. Someone else will fulfill your mission for you. And like I said, the Lord has set many precedents for that happening in the past. So we get to choose to be the players, the ones that score touchdowns, or the ones that observe. It's our choice in this game of marvelous work and wonder. Next point I want to talk about is that the Divine Masculine is a protector. And that's one thing that hasn't exactly been on our radar, because we have not sensed the need to protect anything or anyone from anything. But that is the space of the Divine Masculine, is to create a peaceful environment for the Divine Feminine to flourish, create, nurture, and be. And that, I feel, is the responsibility of the Divine Masculine. The Divine Masculine has a gentle strength about him. Nobody wants to stand next to a Hulk or a Wreck-It Ralph. It needs to be able to hold a flower without crushing it. And again, like I said, create an environment of safety. Even though the Divine Masculine is a protector, it is not one to pick a fight. It does not pull out a weapon of war for the sake of contention. It's not initiating contention for contention's sake. The only reason the Divine Masculine pulls out a weapon of war is to transform it into a weapon of peace and establish peace and maintain it. The next point I want to talk about is that the Divine Masculine has a certain level it has more of a rational beginning to it. Women are predominantly emotional, and that's our strength, but that is also, or can be, our weakness, especially in times of trial, in times of adversity. And we allow ourselves to become irrational and overtaken by emotion, and that creates chaos. The Divine Masculine is level-headed, and it is able to bring things back into a place of Zen, to calm the stormy sea, and again, establish an environment of clear thinking and of vision and of peace, a place of stillness. And that is a great strength that I think should be nurtured, if it isn't, in the Divine Masculine. It is not overtaken by fear. It is not overtaken by any other emotional chaos very easily. It's very stable and stabilizing. In our culture, there's been a lot of focus on things such as appearance. And yes, as I have mentioned, I do believe that the Divine Masculine is strong, and it needs to be strong because the Divine Feminine is strong. So we need to have someone that is compatible in that area, the area of strength. Otherwise, you cannot have a Zipporah standing next to Moses. You cannot have a Miriam standing next to Moses even. You cannot have the likes of Esther standing to, or Emma, to the Divine Masculine. But with that exaggerated attention to what we look like, to our physique, we have really let the pendulum swing way too far into the Babylonian standard of thinking and perceiving things. And even though I do think the Divine Masculine recognizes that his body is what it is, which is a temple, and is holy, and it has a sacred reverence for his body, it certainly does not idolize it or try to make it look a certain way, or have a certain fat to muscle proportion or anything like that. Our body is our vehicle of ascension. We're not going to just lay it down unless we die and follow the Lord into the next phase of our existence. So it does need to be treated as such and regarded as such. And I think it is by the Divine Masculine. Another thing I'm noticing, especially as it pertains to the tribe of Ephraim, is a tendency to ride on the accomplishments of the past. Someone can, serve a mission in their youth and wear that badge of honor for the rest of their lives. And what happens is we begin to measure our current spirituality by our past accomplishments. And as I've said, the Lord is always in the now. It does not matter what has happened in the past. He is very forgiving of any errors, of any mistakes we might have made, of any transgressions we've made in the past. But he's also focusing on the now, because like I say, that is the only place where future can grow out of. Next point is affluence. Again, in our culture, we have let that value slide in big ways, and even though we say that isn't important, that is not that has not been the message of our culture or most of our churches either. We do focus on affluence, and we adopt the prosperity gospel stance on that a lot of the times and assume that wealth equates to righteousness, and it does not. I have lived in many places and been to many places in my life, and some of them, most of them, very poverty-stricken. And I have seen a lot more divinity, humility, and consecration in the places of brokenness, as we would call them in our culture, in the places of economic distress, and in places of externally perceived lack, which those people don't really perceive it as lack. They are able to find a way to prosper and be in abundance, regardless of their financial status or absence by our standards thereof. The next point I want to talk about is acceptability. We have set a lot of boundaries and standards and boxes and check marks around what is acceptable in a man, and especially in a holy man or a divine man. And the Lord is not like that. The only thing He really cares about is the intentions of our heart. You know, if someone is not blessing the sacrament and their shirt and tie, that's regarded as unacceptable. And you know what? The Lord Himself would be utterly unacceptable in our culture with His beard and His dusty robe from walking the roads of Judea. So we really have no room to judge or talk there, and we have been, and that is a pattern we have inherited from our fathers, and it's not healthy. Judging something as acceptable and not acceptable. For the Lord, a lot of the things that are not acceptable to man and to the world are very much acceptable, and that's really the only thing that matters. Last but not least, I wanted to talk about intimacy. Intimacy to me is atonement, and it is a divine connection of souls, and it is a powerful connection when it is a divine one. There needs to be a certain level of compatibility on the emotional and spiritual, perhaps on the intellectual level as well, for it to happen. And intimacy does not necessarily need to be in any proximity to a bedroom. Although sexuality is definitely a part of divinity. You know, we talk to Heavenly Father every day, and He is not an asexual being. The very title Father entails an ability and a capacity not only to create, but to create. So the Elohim are not asexual beings. They have that power within them, and a divine masculine has a self-awareness of his own sexuality, and there's no room for any form of shame or guilt in that area, because God doesn't make mistakes. He did not make a mistake by creating beings that are sexual, that's part of our nature. And that because that's part of His nature, that is part of God's nature. He doesn't shut it down. He knows how to operate within it, and that is another attribute of the divine masculine. So these are my thoughts for today, guys, and I hope someone can learn with me and I hope someone has benefited from some of the things I've touched on. And let's create, shall we? Namaste.